By our good friend, Mr. Ryan Leaf. Ryan, what's going on today, my man?
Not much. Nice day here in Southern California. Got done with the hike and now got this going on.
Awesome, man. Well, see, Ryan, I kind of envy you and Jonathan Rifkin. Rifkin and I were really close, and you always used to talk about, the weather. It's 75 degrees and sunny out here. And in Louisiana, we're battling an ice storm in the middle of February, So you guys have the great weather. I wish I could be there with you, bro.
Yeah, we got the great weather. We don't got the open city though. We've been pretty much locked down for a year in this environment. Things are gradually starting to open up a little bit more, but we're doing the best we can, like everybody else.
Yeah, and you know who opened today, and it was really Jerry Jones with that checkbook for Dak Prescott. I mean, one of the biggest contracts, actually the biggest signing bonus for any NFL quarterback or player in all time was $66 million. Ryan, were you a little bit like me, kind of taken back that they actually signed that deal and is as big as it was, or are you just kind of like, hey, we kind of felt this one coming?
Well, I haven't seen a quarterback play more impressively than Dak Prescott over the last 5 years. Really, the team has to be better, but his play, his contribution, that's what you're looking for in a franchise quarterback. And guess what? That's what the market demands now. It just does. So you're going to have to pay them that type of money if you want to keep them around. You can keep franchise tagging them. They're going to make anywhere $32-34 million, and then you let them go somewhere else and in free agency, or you lock them up. And so they locked them up for 4 years. I was telling Rifkin today that I was born in the wrong decade when it came to playing quarterback. My contract was big, but it was not Dak Prescott big.
Right. Well, it's funny too. I always make the joke, if I die and come back to life, Ryan, that I want to be a fired head coach in the SEC, right? Like that's my goal. I want to have success, but I also want to get fired for the 20 to 30 million, right? I mean, I'm right there with you. Ryan, I was listening to you, and I want to stay in the NFL and then get over to some LSU and some draft prospects. Russell Wilson, I was listening to you. Do you really feel that there's a chance that he's going to be moved from Seattle? Because here in New Orleans and here in Louisiana, everybody feels and wants the Saints to really pursue Russell Wilson. I don't know if the Saints have the capital to go get a Russell Wilson. What do you think is going to happen with that situation with Russell, even though he does have the no trade clause?
I think he stays in Seattle is what I think happens. Yeah. There's too much of a hit on the cap for any team to pick it up. Now, if any team does, they could come to Seattle with an unbelievable offer of draft picks, and they have to have the ability to take on that cap hit when on that salary. So there are a lot of variables that go into it. But they could come with this great package to Seattle, and Seattle says, "Here, Russell, here's this deal," and Russell goes, "I'm not going there." Right. He has a no trade clause. So there are so many moving parts in getting this done. I do not think they all can get lined up in lockstep to make sure that Russell's going to be somewhere else. I just don't see it happen. As I don't see Deshaun leaving Houston either. They have him over a barrel with that new contract, only in his second year, all the big money not coming into the back end of it. So I think all the discussion around this quarterback movement and mobility this offseason is going to be for naught when both those guys are suiting up and playing for their respective teams next fall.
So with them bring up an interesting point, and we have Todd on Facebook Live that's asking the question that I was legitimately about to ask. If the Saints, for whatever reason, couldn't or get Russell Wilson, do you think that Jameis Winston is going to be the next quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, or do you think that they try to stay with Taysom Hill?
Well, from what we've heard, Sean Payton's very taken with Jameis Winston. We didn't get to see much action of him, and he didn't get much playing time. So how do we know what he's going to really be like when he steps into that position? It's interesting. I'm also still really interested with the fact that Drew Brees hasn't come out and announced his retirement yet. I know they adjusted his contract to lower it for salary cap purposes. I think this New Orleans Saints team's in a real situation when it comes to the quarterback position, because I don't think Taysom Hill showed us anything last year that he was a franchise starting quarterback. Now, he's a hybrid of all sorts and can do some amazing things, and they've paid him accordingly. But I'm still interested until I hear Drew Brees utter those words, "Hey, I'm done. I'm moving on. I'm going to step into that NBC Sports box and call some Notre Dame games." I expect him to probably be on the field next year until I hear something different.
Ryan, everybody in the state of Louisiana that's either listening or watching live is giving you a round of applause because that's the central thing that they're saying, right? That they have to see it. It's like the old saying goes, you have to wait to see it before you can believe it, and that's the same thing. And Drew's still working out. Ryan, he was really I don't want to say it was a very bad season for Drew, but sometimes it was. How do you think that if he does come back, how do the Saints need to structure their team to get back to some more wins and make another playoff push? Because some people feel that Drew, he's just not like he used to be. Do you think that the Saints need to go full Denver the last year of Peyton Manning, or can they still win with Drew the way that they've been doing it over the last couple of seasons?
Well, yeah, if the Denver Broncos can win in Peyton's last season, then the New Orleans Saints can. That defense is impressive. And they gotta shore up some things. The cap is a big issue. It drops to 180 million. There's going to be some casualties, but that defense was pretty special. This is also a Drew Brees and a team that beat the Super Bowl champions twice this year. One time humiliated them on primetime television in their own house. So let's not walk away from this and thinking like the end all be all. They probably have one of the most disappointing performances in the last few years because of their ousting in the playoffs where they were so close. They have the most wins in the regular season. They just have to translate that into the postseason and try to get them back to the Super Bowl. I think they can. If Drew Brees feels like he can compete, don't forget he got his ribs cracked, broken this year. He was as beat up as I've ever seen him. So if he can come back healthy, and I think that's why this has taken so long, he wants to see what his body feels like fully healthy after the season's over. Now, if it's still bothersome, it's still giving him a hard time, and he just feels like he can't sacrifice that amount of time that he puts in at being the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, then I think he sets that press conference and talks to us all. But until he has that realization, I expect him to be the one suiting up at quarterback, and that guy is good enough. He's much better than Taysom Hill as your starting quarterback for 16 weeks, and I think he's much better than Jameis Winston right now in your starting lineup for 16 weeks. I really believe that.
And look, Taysom led the NFL with fumbles with 10. I mean, he really struggled. And look, from one athlete to another, and you played at a higher level than I did, but even Phil says, I saw Drew on a sled, and he looked great. I'm not sure if you saw it, Ryan, but he's going up a hill, pushing a sled and a 45-pound weight on top of it, where I would have a heart attack. This man is still in tip-top shape, and he's still looking good. Ryan, I want to transition over to, and I was listening to your show last week, and you talked about Trevor Lawrence. Now, the LSU fans, we had a front row seat when Trevor Lawrence played LSU in the Superdome. He struggled that night, but other than that, a guy that's really put on, really since high school has been, I don't want to say that he's always had the spotlight on him, but you can make that argument as you did. Is he one of those guys that's just a can't-miss prospect? Like, he's got to be the first overall pick in Jacksonville this upcoming draft, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Right. He's probably the most surefire pick since Andrew Luck when he came out of Stanford. He's got every intangible. He's had the spotlight on him since he was in junior high, the number one recruit coming out of high school. First steps on the scene at Clemson his freshman year, wins a national championship and beats an undefeated Alabama team who nobody thought could get beat. So he's got every quality. The only detriment I see moving forward is the fact that he's going to end up a Jaguar. And that's problematic because systemically they are a bad football team. They always have. They've never had a Hall of Famer yet. Now, Baselli may be one of those guys that goes in down the stretch, but you would have to have the type of career where you're in the AFC playoffs every year competing for championships to be considered a Hall of Famer there in Jacksonville. So that's what I hope to see from Trevor. I want to see I also don't know what Urban Meyer is going to bring to the table. What happens when he has a below 500 win-loss record? He's never had one in his whole career. And we've seen how he's walked away when things have gotten difficult before. So what happens when this team is 4-12 or 6-10, and they're struggling? Is he willing to lose through the development part of this? He's never been a part of that. It will be very interesting to see how both of them deal with it. I know Trevor will deal with it in the best possible way because he's just about the most mature and stand-up individual I've ever met.
And Ryan, I know that he's 6'6", and I know that people know that he's tall, but even seeing him in person, you don't realize how big of an individual he is, right? Like his legs, his calves, he's got a huge arm. I mean, he's not a little guy in and of itself. I mean, he might look like a stick on TV, but when you're up and close in person, the dude's just got, I mean, he's built, he's got a good arm. Ryan, the only thing that, and you might be able to talk to this and maybe ease some people, because we've talked about Trevor Lawrence, and when the stage has gotten brightest over the last 2 years, even though he made it to the playoffs, right? Like, oh, well, Trevor Lawrence is, he folds under pressure. But this kid has gone under pressure his entire life in high school, in college, and now into the NFL. You're not worried about that, right? Like, that shouldn't be a worry at all.
No, those are really good teams. LSU was amazing defensively. How many of those defensive players went on to play in the NFL and wreck shop this year even, so, right?
11. Literally 11 defensive guys went into the NFL on that team.
This is the epitome of a team game is football. And if you don't have all 11 guys functioning the same way, it's going to be difficult. Don't forget the highest in the biggest game of his career ever as a freshman, he performed unbelievably in two of the biggest games, the win over Notre Dame in the semifinal and then the win over Alabama in the national championship. Now, he had two pro wide receivers in T. Higgins and Justin Ross, but that doesn't matter. And everybody in the world after that win for the national championship said the rule should exist where you should be able to come out right now, because he would be the number one pick in the NFL draft right now. All any more games did for him was give people a chance to find some semblance of doubt. When somebody shows you who they are for their entire career, believe them. All right? That's who he is. My only worry about Trevor Lawrence is exactly that he ends up in a place where he just disappears and no one hears from him again for the rest of his career, a la Carson Palmer in Cincinnati.
Well, and an interesting thing, too, even a former Clemson quarterback, I mean, Deshaun Watson comes back, those 17 interceptions in his last season at Clemson, and he falls down draft boards, and then all he does is he goes into the NFL and he just destroys people, right? I mean, it's crazy how that works out, and you're right. The film's not going to lie. He's a great quarterback. A big debate, Ryan, has been going on in Louisiana because you have Devontae Smith, a wide receiver from Louisiana who went to Alabama, and Jamar Chase, who opted out this last season. When you've seen those two guys, if it were you and you were making the decision, who would you go with and why if you were going to be the starting quarterback or GM? Which one of those two guys would you want to be throwing the ball to?
Well, at the NFL level, Jamar Chase has just a little more size, and that might be just a little variable that gets him over the hump and maybe sets him up to go higher. But Devontae Smith has proven that his size has meant nothing. I mean, the way he demolished the Tigers this year when they played LSU, it was an unbelievable showing. He was not afraid to be physical. He was not afraid to go up and high point the ball. From what I've seen last, now if I go back and watch every snap of film of Jamar Chase from the last 2 years since he opted out this year, the last thing I remember seeing is Devontae Smith winning a Heisman Trophy. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people believe if Jamar Chase would have played the season, he would have been up there in the debate of best all-around player to be drafted overall in this draft. But as of right now, I'm going with Devontae Smith just because it's the last thing I've seen, and he was absolutely unstoppable on the perimeter, in the slot, anywhere that Steve Sarkisian decided to move him around and make plays, he got it done.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know. I feel like it's a fit for some teams. I don't know if the size really worries me for Devontae Smith. I mean, if it were going to be a problem, Ryan, it would already be a problem, right? Like it would have happened during college too. But the kid was always.
I don't think so. I think it's just like Tua. I think that's why the problem is Tua is just so undersized in immobility. That's why he's always going to have a problem at the NFL level, and he didn't have that in college. He could maneuver and get things done in college because guys were wide open. They run wide open in the NFL. It's a more physical game. You got 300-pounders who can chase you down at the quarterback position before you could run away from them in college. It's a different speed. It's a different animal. You're going to get hit differently, thrown to the ground differently if you were Devontae Smith. It's just the case. He's had the next closest possible thing playing in the SEC. Don't get me wrong, but even the best SEC team over the decades, LSU's from 2 years ago, doesn't beat the worst NFL team. So it's a different animal. It really, really is.
Ryan, when we're looking at quarterbacks in the draft, and I know we've talked about two of the top guys, is there a guy in this class that you're just like, look, I don't know why people are putting him here. I see that this kid's doing good. I'll give an example. I know Mac Jones is climbing up some boards, but Mac Jones, they have a lot of people have him going to the Saints, in the mid-20s. Is there a quarterback out there that you've seen or studied that you're like, man, this kid is a sleeper and he's going to be a huge pickup for one of these NFL teams in this coming draft?
Yeah, Davis Mills out of Stanford. He when he got on campus, he really was considered to be the next Andrew Luck, first-round talent. He's only started 12 games. He's been often injured. He chose to come out and declare for the draft. I thought it was a mistake. I thought he should come back. He could arguably be the number 1 draft pick a year from now, maybe up against Sam Howell. But he chose to come out, and I think he might be in the late second, early third round area. And if you're a team out there that gets him, you could be getting a guy with some first-round talent in that position. If that's the case, he could really be a steal.
Yeah, his name has kind of been incoming, and I haven't studied him a lot. I know that Jonathan Rifkin, who used to do a Pac-12 show with us, talked about him a lot. It'd be very interesting to see how he climbs up the boards and where he gets taken. Ryan, a couple more and we'll get you out of here. I greatly appreciate you joining us. I kind of want to go a little bit back in college since we were talking about the Pac-12. It feels like the Pac-12 hasn't been able to get over that hump that they've been on, getting back into the college football playoff. How do you think a team like a USC or Stanford or Oregon, what do they need to do to get back there and be, I don't want to say relevant because I feel like USC, Oregon, and these teams are always relevant. I don't know why people say that in my opinion, but what do you think that they need to do to get over that hump and start making pushes inside of in the college football playoff?
Well, you need an elite team. You need a team. I mean, if the ACC isn't all that good, the SEC from top to bottom isn't as good as the Pac-12. The Big 12 is the same. Oklahoma's always at the top. What's it about the Big 10, right? It's Ohio State. You have to be an elite team. And you know what? I've fought this tooth and nail on whether or not I like the Pac-12 conference when I don't know who's going to win every single weekend. Like when I watched USC play, Stanford, I don't know who's going to win that game. When I watch Oregon go on the road and play Washington State, I don't know who's going to win that game because they're so highly competitive. From top to bottom, it's the most competitive conference in the country, but it doesn't get you into the college football playoff because most likely you're not going to have an undefeated team, so you won't be highly ranked enough to get into the college football playoff. What needs to change is the idea that only 4 teams can make it in. I used to think that was pretty cool. The elite of the elite get in. But what we've done is we've isolated and we have ostracized almost everybody else in college football. It's going to be Clemson, it's going to be Alabama, and it's going to be Ohio State. Every other year, Oklahoma may throw their hat in the ring, maybe LSU or somebody may have something else to say, Georgia, but that's it. And when you're doing that, no one cares about college football anymore. We don't care. You're ruining the sport. It doesn't mean that Alabama isn't going to be playing Clemson or Ohio State for the national championship, and most likely it's going to. But we need to expand it and allow more teams to be involved so further down the year, we have more excitement around it. An Oregon can get in with 2 losses because of the Pac-12 champs. I think that's the next necessary step. I'm just don't know if they're going to do it or not.
How many teams would you put in? Would you put 6 or 8 or how many teams would you let into a playoff? Well,
we've clearly shown this year we can play, as many conference games as we want to play. We can play straight up conference games, that's it, and maybe a non-conference. So, maybe I'm an 8 guy. Maybe I'm even as high as a 16 guy, really. If you want to keep the cap at 15 games for a champion, then you're just going to have to play less of a regular season, more straight up conference games, make it as difficult as possible, maybe a non-conference game in the pool. But yeah, I think what the college football playoff is doing, the all in every Tuesday night, which means nothing on Tuesday nights except for drama that ESPN built, is, all it does is remove themselves from the bigger narrative, and they're going to be their own worst enemy when people stop watching because the games don't matter anymore.
Mm-hmm. I've always said I thought it could be 6, like maybe the first 2 get a bye, but I kind of agree with you. I want a little bit of an expansion. But Ryan, and last question, and we'll get you out of here. I know that a lot of those teams are in the top, meaning it's always going to be Alabama, Clemson, or whoever it might be, but it's always kind of chalky. What happens if you expand it? And let's just say, for example, a Wisconsin who might slip in, plays in Alabama and gets destroyed.
Doesn't matter.
Does it really matter?
They're part of it. They fought their way in and got in. the result's going to be the result, right?
Right.
Oregon gets in and plays Alabama and gets destroyed. Tell me how the semifinals haven't been destruction viewing anyway. They were destroyed. They were terrible games this year. They've been terrible games most of the time. So hey, but guess what? This year, out of the 16, the 8-9 matchup this year would have been like BYU Coastal Carolina, which was probably the best college football game of the year. So you're going to get some better semifinals. You know what? You might get the blowout from Alabama, but guess what? Doesn't matter if Alabama's playing 16 or playing 4. There was going to be a blowout anyway.
Yeah, and look, you don't know what's going to happen if a team gets hot anyway. A team wins the first playoff. I mean, I thought that one of the better games I saw was when LSU beats Oklahoma, and they take that and they go into beating Clemson, and their defense that had been struggling. I somewhat agree with that. Ryan Leaf is our guest. Ryan, I greatly appreciate you joining us. I know that you got the new show going on. I've been watching every day that I can and all the clips. It's been fantastic. Tell everybody where they can follow your show and everything that you guys are doing.
Yeah, we just launched the Ryan D. Leaf Show on YouTube, so you can go there to subscribe. We're noon to 1 Pacific every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Kind of getting everybody affiliated with it. You can follow me on all my social media platforms at Ryan D. Leaf, and just keep doing what you're doing. Talking sports, bringing people together. That's what our plan is. So we're excited and we're happy we're doing it.